All right, everyone, it is 4 p.m. So today, 4 p.m. Eastern, I should say, but welcome to the last session of our first day of our first virtual conference ever. I am so happy to be here with you all today. My name is Haley Wright, and this is the last session of the day, but to be honest, this is my most anticipated one, so I'm super excited for this one. To follow along with our theme of our entire 2-day conference, because it's not over, we have tomorrow as well. Our theme was equity. So today in our session right now is especially important because, as you can see in the slide here, the title is Promoting Equality, Intervention Tools in USA Test Prep. So we want to show you those tools that will promote equality, will promote equity within the classroom today. My name is Haley Wright, and I am the training manager here at USA Test Prep, one of two, but you will not actually hear from me all day. I will just be your bookend for this session. So I will say hello and pass it over to some great ladies, but the two people speaking today is first we'll have Sharon Valeris. And Sharon, can you wave for those people who can see you? There's Sharon. Hi, Sharon.
Hello.
So Sharon is a success manager here at USA Test Prep. If you came to a session earlier today, you probably heard her speak as well. But a little bit about Sharon is she has taught in the past 13 years in the New York City public school system. So she worked as a resource room teacher in elementary schools in the Bronx and in Queens, right?
Yeah.
So I cannot wait to hear Sharon talk because she knows a little bit about, right, promoting equality and equity in the classroom. And with that being said, we also have Laura Burgess in just a bit. And Laura, if you can wave if you're on camera, I don't think I can see you in my little view. There she is. There's Laura, and Laura actually does not work from USA Test Prep. She is a teacher, just like most of you on the call. I'm so excited to have her today. She is a brand ambassador for USA Test Prep. So basically, brand ambassadors for USA Test Prep, they're teachers in classrooms just like you, virtual maybe now, in person in some instances, but they're people who use USA Test Prep basically daily. They're the go-to people within their classrooms. And Laura actually teaches in Cleveland, Georgia. So if I have any Georgia folks, this may seem pretty familiar to you. And we're actually going to kick it off in just a second with Laura speaking, but just a few housekeeping items before we get started. The first is if you have any questions, I will actually be monitoring the chat. So we would prefer if you could, because we have so many on the call, if you'll put your questions in the chat and I will actually type in the answers as we go through. If you happen to need to ask your questions out loud, sometimes it's difficult to type complex questions. You can actually use the hand raise feature within the Zoom chat there. So put your questions in there. Additionally, you will get the recording to this session on Monday. We'll send that out via email to everyone. So you will get the recording if for any reason you need to hop off. And when I pass it over to Laura, Laura's actually just going to give a testimonial story of what she does with USA Test Prep in her classroom. She's actually, right, there's Laura there. I'll let her unmute. And while she's speaking, I'm going to post a couple of things in the chat. One's a certificate of completion, and the other is a copy of the Google Slides that you see here. So Laura, if you want to unmute yourself, I will be quiet and let you take the floor.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. It's awesome to get to talk to you and share our experience that we have at White County Middle School with USA Test Prep. It has been a godsend in the previous years, but this year, boy, howdy, I'll tell you what, it's coming in real handy this year. Everybody is using it, and I don't think my door stays closed long enough for anybody. They just keep coming in asking how they can implement it into our classroom. I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about it because it's more specialized on how we're using it. I've given 3 presentations at our middle school alone on USA Test Prep, and it's more of a general overview. So I'm really excited to talk about how we're using it individually with our tier programs and also our special education students. What we do, and I'm going to give you a case study, what we do in our classroom last year, I'm going to give you our case study from our student last year. We had a student who was had a deficit in pronouns and working with pronouns, using pronouns in her writing. And so what we did is when we signed up and put our profiles into USA Test Prep, we made sure that we had access to the 6th grade testing questions and the 8th grade testing questions, along with 7th grade. I teach 7th grade English. And what we did with her to meet her IEP goals, where we had a progress monitor prove that we were working on those goals, we set up like 3 times a week, she would work on a USA Test Prep activity from the pronoun section of the 6th grade test. She would watch videos. She would do a performance task. She would have questions, work with the vocabulary. Every now and then we gave her a game to play with the pronouns. That way she didn't feel like it was constant work for her. And it was never too much. We didn't want to overload her. But about every month we would do a progress monitoring USA Test Prep assessment to see how she was progressing to her goals. And then we would use the progress report that is accessible on the USA Test Prep site and their platform. We would use that progress report for that specific goal to take to her IEP meetings, to give to her caseload manager, and also to send home to mom and dad so they would see that she is progressing towards her goals. That is one way that we used it in our classroom. And we do that for various different goals that they have. Another one that we use it for is our RTI or MTSS, or however you label it, the tier program at your school. Ours is now MTSS. And so what we do is based on their desired level, what they need, we have a MAP test that we're giving. And we do that 3 times a year, and we're doing that this week. Whew, everybody pray for us because we got one more day of this, and we're doing our online learner. So heaven help us, we're going to get them done tomorrow. And so we take that information and we use it to design lessons in USA Test Prep that we can see. Okay, so I'm just going to use Sharon's name because she's right there smiling at me. So we know that Sharon has a deficit in nonfiction. So we know that she needs that informational literature standard, and she needs to be stronger in that based on her MAP score. So what we do is we go into USA Test Prep, and we have like an every Friday or every other Friday lesson that we give her, and we design those lessons not to overload her, but give her, we'll start her out on this standard. We're going to do a video and a performance task. We're going to do a video and a vocabulary. But to help build that level of knowledge for her to fit in that standard that we've realized that she's got that deficit in. And so by the time we take another MAP test in the winter, she's had direct instruction under certain standards. So under the nonfiction or informational standards, we know that she's been working on those, so we should see an increase. And so when we meet for our RTI or tier 2, tier 3 meetings, we pull again that USA Test Prep progress report. I love it. I take it to parent meetings. I take it everywhere. I have a book that I show the kids and hold them responsible for it too. But we use that data at those MTSS or RTI meetings to show the kids and the parents and our admin, this is what we're doing. This is how we're incorporating it. And now you can see from fall when we test it to winter when we test it, this is everything that we did on USA Test Prep. This is how they scored on USA Test Prep. And now this is how they've scored on the MAP. So they've either increased or decreased. We haven't really had anybody decrease. Most of the time they increase, unless they're just really, really needing to be pushed up those tiers. And so that gives us that good data as well, that we know, all right, we're using this intervention. We're using these hard questions, these test-based questions. And if they score really low on that MAP test, we're going to give them the 6th grade standards to kind of build them up. And so that helps them, enriches them into progressing towards the 7th grade goal and getting them up to the 7th grade standards. I don't know if this really falls under RTI or not, but we also use it for our enrichment. If we find that kids are on that MAP test, they're blowing it out of the water and they're on that high level, we're using that data as well. And we're giving them 8th grade level questions to work on. And build those skills stronger to get them ready for 8th grade.
Perfect, Laura. Laura, thank you so much for
You're
that.
welcome.
Like I said, you guys, Laura teaches, right? She took the time out of her day to talk about this. And Laura, I love just hearing you talk and hearing your story. So thank you so much for
You're
being
welcome.
here, right? We can't do it without people like you guys and Laura. So with that being said, before I pass it over to Sharon to follow up with what Laura just said. So Laura told you basically some ideas of the way she uses us. So Sharon's actually going to go into the platform, but before we do that, I'm just going to launch a poll really quickly. So if you don't mind, there's a poll that should pop up on your screen just asking you, does your school or district subscribe to USA Test Prep? All right, so I'm launching that now. And just yes, no, if you're not sure, just so we can get an idea to make sure, right, that we know who's here with us today. And we'll give it just a few seconds there. All righty. Let's get to 30 seconds, and then what we'll do is go through to the next slide.
Hey, Haley, I'm going to sign off.
Of course, Laura. Thank you
Um,
so much.
if you guys need me, feel free to share my email address. If anybody has any questions, wants to chit chat on how to use it, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions and do anything I can for you guys.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Bye, Sharon.
Take care. Take care of the kids.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. So, Sharon, with that being said, I'm going to let you unmute, and then I'm going to move to the next slide so we can talk about the agenda today.
All right, thank you very much. Hi, my name is Sharon Valeris. I'm good to meet everyone here today. So today's agenda is going to talk about using USA Test Prep for Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. And some of those interventions involve creating assessments, different types of assessments, how to view student progress, how to assign remediation, how to build multiple activity assignments for students, and one of the key components is self-directed learning, different ways that students can direct their own learning, look for their own remediation opportunities, and then we'll round out with site-wide accommodations. One of the key things I want to, Laura, that was awesome. The the information that Laura gave about how she's implementing USA Test Prep in her classroom. And one of the key things that I took away from what she said was how she talked about how, one, using multiple levels. So her school has 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade resources. So that broadens the playing field. So if you have those low level kids, you can give them low level work to meet them where they are for scaffolding. If you have some higher level kids, they're not bored and stuck feeling unfulfilled in a class where everybody else is lower than them. You can let them go on, you can let them soar, and you're all in the same classroom together doing this. And then another thing that I took away from is she talked about enrichment. So it's not just remediation, it's not just basic classroom work, it's not just doing practice test questions, it's a total classroom solution that they are using it for. So that was awesome. That was great. Okay, next slide, please. So all of us are educators. I know all of us are familiar with this chart. This is about the levels of intervention. So for Tier 1, that's your core classroom instruction. USA Test Prep can do that. So for instance, if you were using USA Test Prep in the classroom on a smart board and projecting your screen, it does not have to look any different if you are doing a Zoom meeting with your students. Go to those bell ringers, do those as your lesson, project your screen, and then give them some practice work after the lesson to work on independently, and then come back together and go over it. That's one basic structure that you can do, whether it's in classroom or whether they're at home. Now, Tier 2 is targeted small group instruction. That's what you're going to do is I'm going to show you how to look at data and how to create small groups and create focused activities for those students where they need the intervention the most. So those are going to do things like viewing the progress reports, assigning remediation, and creating targeted activities. Some of you joined me earlier, we talked about creating assessments. We're going to talk about creating assessments today again during this session, but it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk about digging deep and creating targeted assessments, customized assessments, if you will. And then tier 3 is the self-directed learning. I'm going to show you how students can go into USA Test Prep on their own and practice and remediation on their own and take control and ownership of their learning. I always tell this story. In the classroom, there would always, the administrator would come in and they would never want to talk to me. They always wanted to talk to one particular student. And you're always, nope, don't go to him. Don't go to him. In your mind, you're saying that, don't go to him. And he would or she would go to that particular student and say, what are you working on today? Now imagine in the USA Test Prep world where the student can look at that administrator and say, I'm working on multiplying fractions by whole numbers, and they can give the name of the standard because it appears on their USA Test Prep screen. And right now I am working on turning my pink dots because I'm weak in that area, and I'm working on turning it green. I think an administrator, any administrator, would be blown away by a student being able to communicate what their strengths or weaknesses are on such a level. And USA Test Prep helps the student to be able to do that. So I think it's awesome. And we'll talk finally about the green dot challenge. That's pretty much basically what I was just talking about. All right,
All
so
right. Sharon, are you ready? I can
I
stop
think I am.
sharing and you can jump on in, and Sharon will actually show you what it looks like in USA Test Prep. So I'm going to stop
Yes.
here,
Mm-hmm.
and Sharon, it should allow you to share now.
Okay. All right, I'm sharing my screen. You should see a typical USA Test Prep screen for a sample teacher. Is everyone able to see my screen okay? Just give me a thumbs up. Okay, perfect. I'm going to minimize your beautiful faces so that I can see the entire screen. Now, this is a typical USA Test Prep. Every teacher who logs in, this is what they see. They see their classes tab, they see their messages tab, assessments, assignments, favorites, and badges. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about as far as interventions go is assessments. If you do not know how to create an assessment, if you come up here to help, under training, we have a whole webinar on creating an assessments. And if you haven't checked that out, I encourage everybody to come here and check that webinar out and all of the other webinars that are here. They're free. You can watch them as many times as you need to, stop and start, take notes. It's all self-directed at your own pace. And then we also have down here a calendar of other free webinars on different topics throughout the month. We update this every month. Every single webinar here is free. You just click on a webinar. And if this date and time does not work for you, it's okay, register anyway, and the link to the recording will be sent to you after the webinar is done. So let's go back and let's talk about assessments. Now, there's two ways to create an assessment. I'm going to click on this link here to create a new assessment, any assessment that you make. That's going to be your link. You're going to give your assessment a name. You're choosing the subject area that you're going to be teaching. So for this scenario, we're going to go with 6th grade math. And here are some settings that you can set. You have some controls here. You can share the assessment. That means that if you share the assessment, that means any teacher who also teaches 6th grade math in your school can see your assessment, and they can take it and assign it to their kids too. So that's great for departmentalized schools. Allow students to view item results. What that means is that as soon as the assessment is done, the student gets their score, but then they also get a breakdown of what they got right and wrong. and explanations of why that answer was right or wrong. So be judicious in this particular setting. You don't necessarily want to create scenarios where students, one student takes the test, writes down the answers, and becomes an entrepreneur and sells it to everybody else. So you can start by saying no, and then after you know everybody's done it, come back here, change those settings to yes, and then basically what you're doing is releasing the test to the students so that they can see the questions and the answers and the explanations. Allow calculator. If you want them to be able to use a calculator with this assessment, you can choose yes or no. For most math assessments, they are allowed to use a calculator, and we do have a scientific calculator embedded into our system that the students can use. Allow students to view questions in Spanish. If you are working with an ESL population, our site can automatically translate from English to Spanish with just the click of a button, and I will model that for you when we look at an actual assessment logged in as a student. Enable text-to-speech functionality. That is a very common accommodation on students' IEPs. They can get tests read to them. If you are working with students who have that accommodation, you can select that, and there will be a little speaker that appears next to the question and to the answer choices. And all the student has to do is click on that speaker, and the question will get read aloud to them, and the speaker and the answer choices will be read aloud to them as well. Display questions in random order is self-explanatory. All that means is that every student takes the same exact assessment. They just shuffle the questions. And number of answers per question. That is another very common accommodation for IEP students. What that means is that some students have reduced answer choices. And what that means is that instead of four answer choices, you can reduce it down to 3 just by clicking 3. And what'll happen is they'll still see 4, but one of them will be crossed out and they can't select it, and they will only be allowed to choose from the other 3. So once you've made your choices in settings here, you can click continue. Now there's 2 modes for creating an assessment. One, USA Test Prep chooses the questions. That means that USA Test Prep will look at your state and they will create an assessment for you that's modeled after the standards for your state. It's a pre-built test, and this is great for an overall diagnostic. We talked about that this morning, but today for this particular one, we're talking about intervention. So it's under the presumption that you've already given the diagnostic, and now you're ready to start doing the targeted interventions. So this is where you choose all of the questions. So let's click on that. And when you choosing the questions, you get to choose the domain. So let's say you're working on number systems in operations. And then you get to choose whatever standard you want to work on. So you're going to be using the data that the students have done from their diagnostic assessment, as well as the IEP to guide what you're creating for them here. So for instance, if the IEP says that they need to be working on quotients, click on the quotients, and here are some questions for quotients. Once you get down to the bottom, you'll see a little link here that says load more questions. And you can see more and click loading and loading and loading. So our database there's thousands of questions here. So there is plenty for you to choose from. Now let's go back up. There's some other things that you can do here. Over here, under random, under this drop-down menu, you can sort the questions a couple of different ways. You can sort by popularity, by newest. You can sort by low difficulty, low DOK, high DOK, and short answer. So you can create multiple assessments. So for instance, you can create an assessment with just low DOK questions for those lower level students, and then choose something higher for those more advanced students. You have an unlimited site license with USA Test Prep. You can create as many different activities as you want. So when you're choosing your question, all you need to do is just put a check mark next to that question. If you want to see what it looks like, you can just click on the question to view it. And this is what it looks like for the student. Here's that little pink ES for Espanol. Here's the little speaker for the question to be read aloud. So you can get a preview of what it looks like from the student's point of view. So let's see, we're working on quotient. So maybe we'll do a 5-question quiz on quotients, just to get a feel. Now, let's talk about this very quickly. This stats bar. This is a nifty little tool. This tells you exactly how many times this question has been used in a test in USA Test Prep. So 13,502 times it's been answered. Percent correct, 55% of the kids who've encountered this question answered it correct on the first try. It's a DOK level, and it's ranks number 344 in popularity. So if that information is important to you, it's there. So we've made our selections. Now let's click continue. Favorite questions. When you encounter questions within USA Test Prep, you can flag them as favorites. One of the things you can do, for instance, when you're doing your bell ringers, maybe you flag those as favorites and then include them on your unit test at the end of or your quiz at the end of the week. That's one way you can do it. And you have a choice as to whether or not you want to include favorites. For right now, we're just going to say no and go on. You can also include other types of questions besides the basic multiple choice questions. You can include performance tasks. So let's click on one so you can include that. Now these are technology enhanced questions. So let's choose the domain. We were numbers and systems and operations, and we're going to stay with the quotients because that's what we're working on. And you have a couple of different types of activities. Some are matching, some are labeling, some are choose. So here is an 8-point question with matching. If you want to see what it looks like, let's click on it in preview. So as you can see, this is a drag and drop activity that the students would be working on. And this is kind of reminiscent of exactly what they would encounter on their test. So this is good practice for them. So if you like what you see there, you can include it. And you can include multiple or just one. It's up to you. Whenever you're done making your choices, you can click continue. And you can add other types of questions too. For instance, 2-part items. Now, the 2-part items, they work the same way. You choose your domain, you choose your standard, you click on the question to preview it, and you can see that there is one prompt here, and then 2 questions that they answer based on that prompt. If you like what you see, you can put a check mark, was that one, and then select it, and then click continue. And then finally, free response questions. Now, these are open-ended and they require higher order thinking. And they're the one thing on USA Test Prep that are not auto-graded. So this you will have to manually grade, but we do give you a rubric to help you in grading it and an answer key. So let's add a free response to this particular activity also. Let's see. So here is the question that they're going to be expected to answer. And then here is where they're going to type their answer. If you like what you see, you just go ahead and include it. For the free response, you have to give it a point value. So let's make that 2. And then click continue. And now you have a preview of what your assessment is going to look like for the students. Now, from this preview screen, there's some other things you can do. There's some edits and tweaks you can do here. This arrow moves questions up or down. This link replaces a question with a similar question. So let's say you don't like this particular question, or you know that they've done this particular one before in some other activity. You can replace with a similar question. And you're given 5 different options to choose from. You just choose the option and the question gets replaced. Now, the great thing about this, let's say you wanted to make a pre-test and then a post-test, make your first test, then come back here, make a copy, and I'll show you how to duplicate an assessment, swap out the questions, and you can give them a post-test, and then you have something to use as a comparison between how they started when they first started working on this particular standard and how they did after the remediation that you've been providing to them. So I like what I see. I'm going to save it. You can assign it right here to the students, or you can wait and assign it later. Let's go ahead and assign it now. So it's a single activity. I'm going to be giving it to my sample 6th grade math class here. If you click on these little arrows, you can see the list of the students that are in that class. Now, as far as differentiation goes, you don't have to give it to all of the students. You can create one assessment that is for your general students, and then you can create alternates of that same assessment for your special needs kiddos. So you have some flexibility and control here. And then once you're done, you can even type a little note or a message for them. And then click continue. There's that test that I created, sample test. You pick the start date. So this is the date that they're going to start working on it. The date that you want them to finish it by. The suggested time limit. For IEP students and 504 plan students, another common accommodation that they get is extended time. So if you want to give them extra time to work on it, you can. Now, one thing to know about this is that USATestprep does not cut them off. They can continue to work after that time is expired. However, they will know that the 2 hours have gone and the timer turns red after that. And you as a teacher get notified that they took longer than the time you specified to complete the activity. And then you can tweak some other settings here. If you wanted to set a minimum score, you wanted them to require to meet, you can. If you want to give them multiple attempts to try on a particular activity, you can. You can allow them to retry missed items. What that means is that after the students are done, the system will say, hey, you got numbers 1, 4, and 5 wrong. Do you want to go back and look at those again? And they'll have the opportunity to do that. You can select yes or no. And you can choose to add this particular assignment to the school bank so that other teachers can see it and assign it to their kids too. You can choose yes or no, and then you just save that assignment. So let's return to assignments and let's just talk about what we just did. We created a sample test that's targeted just on one particular standard that you know your students need to be working on. It was quotients. That's what we were going to be working on. We created the assessment and then we assigned it to our students. I'm going to pause here for a moment and ask if there are any questions.
Sure, and there's a few in the chat, but I'm going to take care of them.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So once we've created our assessment, if you have students that don't have limited access to technology, and I'm sure you do, there are probably some who either don't have a computer or they don't have Wi-Fi access to internet, or they're trying to go to school on their mom's cell phone, and we get it. So one of the things you can do when you create activities here in this assessment tab, one of the things you can do is you can print that assessment. So under you just select print and then just say I agree, and the printable links will come up. You can print the questions in English or in Spanish. You can print the performance task, the free response, and the 2-part items. So you can make a little packet that you can send home to students. You can even email it to them too. So whatever mode you want to use to get it to them, you can. And one of the things with the printing of the questions, I just want to bring that up. Another common accommodation, especially for ADHD students and students who are visually impaired, is that they get tests with increased font sizes. So we allow you to do that. So if you need to increase the font size and make it bigger, you can. For some ADHD students, they have an accommodation where the test has to be in a certain format, or they need additional spacing between the questions to help them stay focused. And you can also modify the answer layout. If this layout does not work for them and this is better, where it's for like this, you can switch that around, and then you can print that out for those students. So you can tweak and make your assessments however you want to make them. So let's go back. Now, once you've created your particular assessment, one thing I want to point out, I call this sample test. You don't have to always call these activities tests. You can create a 5 practice homework. You can call it classwork. You can call it quiz. You can call it extra practice, independent study. Whatever you want to type here in the name, you can. So you can create a bunch of different activities all in the assessment tab. Name it whatever you want to name it, assign it out, and the students can work on it. Now let's talk about why you want to do this. The reason why you want to create an assessment and give it to your students is, let's look at this one, this grade 6 math September diagnostic. Here I see that 7 students took it. I'm going to click on that number. You get some good information here. You get the test average of your whole class. You get a breakdown of what standards were addressed in the test and how they did, and you can view this by domain or by standard. And I would encourage you to make sure that you scroll all the way down, because this is where the magic happens. You get this particular chart, which is the remediation tab, and you can see all of your students that took the assessment. You can see every single standard that was addressed by that assessment and how they did. Any place where there's a pink mark, you know that they need remediation. So for instance, right here, you can see nets, pinks across the board. So you can you can create remediation for those students. Here's how you do it. Up here, assign average weakness. If you click on this, USA Test Prep will look at your student scores and tell you what the top 3 weakest areas are. Yes, you can see it by looking, but USA Test Prep does it for you. If you click on, you can select 1 area, 2 areas, or 3 weak areas. Choose your start date, choose your end date, the date that you want them to finish working on it, and you can select the students. You can select all of the students, or you can pick and choose. And remediation will be automatically pushed out to those students in these 3 weak areas. Now, another mode of remediation is assign individual weakness. If you click here, USA Test Prep will look at each individual student, and you can assign them 1 weak area, 2 weak areas, or 3 weak areas. And same scenario, you'll pick your start date, you pick your end date, you pick your students that are going to work on it, click assign, and it's automatically pushed out. Now, a good way to work on this, if you are in a hybrid situation where they have 1 day on and then 1 day off for independent study, give them some homework to practice. The scores come back to you. Come to this tab, assign this assign this average and individual weakness, and that is what they work on their day off. So they're practicing in the areas that they've demonstrated that they are weak in. So I think this is amazing. And you're using the students' data to drive instruction. Now, I'm going to pause for another moment. Are there any questions about this particular tab? Okay, so let's move on. Now remember, we talked about assessments where you can duplicate the assessment. So let's go back to our assignments tab, our assessments tab. You've created the assessment in the beginning of the week. Now it's 3 weeks have gone by. You've been giving classwork in progress and assigning that remediation. So now you want to see how they're doing. So what you can do is duplicate the assessment. So you come to the assessment and then you click duplicate. You say yes to make sure that you do it. And now here it is, sample test duplicate. So it's created a copy of that test. Now we're going to tweak it. We can tweak the settings. We're going to rename it. I don't want to call it duplicate. Let's call it sample post test. You can tweak any of the accommodation settings here that you need to tweak and just save it. If you want to change the questions, just click on this little yellow pencil. And here we use these links to swap out the questions. And you do that for each of the questions. So you get the gist. So you're giving similar questions to the students. And if you do that for all of your questions, now you'll have a post test that you can save and assign to your students. And you'll have the ability to compare the two, where they were when they started, and then where they were at the end of all of the remediation that you've been giving them. And so you'll have a pre-test and a post-test. Now I'm going to go back home. So now let's talk about another type of intervention. Let's talk about creating multiple activity assignments. If you go to the assignments tab, you can create assignments that are just more than practice questions. You can include videos, vocabulary, puzzles, games, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's click on the assignments tab. Let's go to create new assignment. You can have just a single activity or you can have multiple activities. Let's go with multiple. It's going to my 6th grade math class. I can pick and choose the students that get it, or I can have all of the students work on it. And let's click continue. Let's call this practice. This is 6th grade math. And I'm going to choose the domain. So we were working on numbers and systems and operations, and we were working on quotients. And the great thing about this view is it tells you what standards you've worked on with your students and where they need remediation. So you have that data handy for you. So they need remediation quotient. So let's pick questions. We're going to have some vocabulary. We're going to have performance tasks. And if you want to look at the performance tasks, you can just click on it and a sample of it appears. And you can see it's a drag and drop activity. I'm going to go back. I'm going to choose that one. I'm going to choose videos. You can choose 1 video or 2 of them. Puzzles, and then we're going to round it out with some games and a free response. Let's go with that one. All right, now let's click continue. You choose a start date. So for instance, let's say they're going to work on that tomorrow on their off date. So they can start working on it either right away or whatever date you set in the future. And the date that you set the ending date. And here you can switch around. If you hover over, you can put it in any order that you want to. A recommended order would be for the students to start with maybe either a video and then maybe some vocabulary, some practice questions. Maybe you can break the monotony by giving them a crossword puzzle to work on for fun. And then maybe they do the performance task and the free response, and then they can end with a game. But you can set any order you want to. You can also tweak any of these settings here. So if you want to set a minimum score, you can, or you can leave it at none. If you want to give them multiple attempts, you can. If you want them to be able to retry missed items, they can. You can let them work in the order that you've chosen, or you can let them work in any order they want to. You control all of this. Once you've made all of your settings, you just click Save. And the great thing about USA Test Prep is if you forget a step, USA Test Prep will tell you. See, right here it says, please choose a maximum point value for assignment number. So what happened is the free response, you need to give it a point value. And USA Test Prep is reminding me that I need to do that. So let's make it 2 and then save the assignment. Success, the assignment has been created. So I've created a multi-step obstacle course for the students to work on. This can be done for classwork, it can be done for homework, it can be done for independent study on their off day. However you want to create these and how you want to use them is up to you. I'm going to pause for a moment for any questions about assignments. Okay, so now we'll go to self-directed learning. So one of the things you can do with USA Test Prep is, as a teacher, you can view progress reports. Next to your individual class, this little icon here is the progress report icon. If you click on that, you just choose the subject area. So this is a 6th grade math class. You can tweak the progress report. You can have it include any information that you want. If you don't want it to include puzzles and games or videos, you can take those out, or you can leave everything in. You can also set date ranges or pick predefined date ranges. It's up to you. Once you've done making all of your selections, you click Go. And here is your progress report that's going to help you drive your instruction. You can see every single standard, how they're doing in the standard, and the dot rank. You can also assign remediation from this particular progress report. So you can create remediation for the students in the tab that I showed you before, or you can come here to the progress report and create remediation. Now, in addition to the class.rank, there's a tab here for student.rank. You can see the dot rank for each individual student. If you click on the individual student's name, it generates a progress report that you can print, and you can use this for conferencing. You can use it for your IEP or your RTI meetings to help you drive the discussions that you have with the parents or guardians. You can also send this home. You can send this home as a progress report on a weekly basis or bi-weekly, whatever way you set up. The students also have access to this same information too. Now I'm going to go back home. Now finally, let's log in as a student to see what students see from their point of view. So to log in as a student, I'm going to go to this sample 6th grade math class. I'm going to click on class management. And I'm going to pick a student to log in. I'm going to pick Miss Melanie Acorn. So I'm going to log in as her. And you as teachers, you have the ability to do this too. So here is Melody. Here is work that she has assigned to her that she needs to work on. Remember, I made that practice activity. Here it is for her. The video, the vocabulary, the questions, the crossword puzzles, etc. That's all there for her. She has an independent study activity for quotients for her to work on too, that she's already started working on some of them, and your scores are there. If you want to see, you can just click view and see it. But one of the things that I wanted to point out to you for Melody is up here, she has this link called practice. If you hover over practice and then go to the subject area, it takes her to her independent learning portal. She has access to her dot rank, so she can see every single standard, how she's doing standard by standard. Each one of these standards is clickable, and there is a pre-made module for her to work on. So you don't necessarily have to assign things to students. You can, or they can come here and work independently. You can say, okay, class, everybody's going to go to their independent learning page and they're going to work on unit rates. And I want you to work through this, go through the videos, go through the vocabulary, go through the questions, performance tasks, and that can be their activity. And all of their information, all of that data is collected and gets reported back to you. In addition to that, Melody, she can also take a test on her own. If she clicks this icon, take a test, she can take a small test, medium test, large test, or a full-size test. She can also take a domain-specific test. Now, the test will be random. Each individual student will get a different test, but that data is tabulated and reported back to you as the teacher. So that's another way that students can self-direct their learning. They can view their progress report the same way that you could. Here is Melody's progress report. So she can see it. And if parents say want us to keep track, give the parent the password, tell the parents to log in, and they can see the progress report too. So they can see what their kids are doing online. Now, one last thing that I wanted to point out from the student's point of view is if they finished an assessment, if they click view, they can review it. And here she took that diagnostic, she scored really low. She scored 16%. But here's what USA Test Prep does. It tells her exactly what domains were included in the test, or she can go by standard. And if she clicks on these pink exclamation points, she can go and watch videos, she can do practice, vocabulary, or complete practice questions. It tells her where her remediation is needed. So there are multiple ways that students can learn independently within USA Test Prep. That's that tiered 3 intervention, that targeted intervention, that's self-directed, and the students are clearly seeing exactly what standard they're working on when they are working within USA Test Prep. Now, I'm going to return back to the home screen. I'm going to return back to my teacher account, I should say, by clicking return to your account. And I'm going to stop there and I'm going to pause for questions. We're a little bit over time and I apologize for that, but hopefully this gives you some ideas for how you can use USA Test Prep to generate interventions for your students that are individualized and targeted directly toward each individual student that you're working with. It's so simple, so easy. I think this is a game changer. So I'll open up the floor and I'd like to hear what other people are thinking, or if you want to share how you're using USA Test Prep in your classroom, that would be good too.
While we do that, Sharon, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen again so we can get the last little slide going on. But yeah, with that being said, I just noticed someone did just mention in the chat, it was Sheila. And Sheila, thank you so much. If you guys saw, she wrote in there that she uses USA Test Prep when they do student testing in her library. So super excited. And we've been getting some great chats in there as well. So for sure, anyone, if you had something to say, raise your hand. We would love to hear you. Write it in the chat. Additionally, you should still be seeing my screen now.
Yeah.
And we do have something like Sharon did mention. Sharon mentioned something as soon as she opened it up with, right, if you needed students who either needed enrichment or right some of that remediation practice, it's a good idea to think about if you're a 7th grade ELA teacher, you might need access to 8th grade ELA or 6th grade ELA, something of that nature. We are providing, like you see on this slide, a 10% discount to those of you who attend this conference. So feel free to use this code if you're interested, or even if you wanted to trial out some of those subscriptions, you can always let us know, me or Sharon. Right, you can email this email or Mine and Sharon's emails are pretty simple. It's our first name at USATestprep.com. But yeah, we'll stay around and monitor the chat. And Sharon, if there's no other questions, right, you all can, of course, drop off and leave. But Sharon, I just want to say thank you because it's always so exciting to me to hear Sharon speak. I always get kind of the tingles. I get excited because I actually graduated with my bachelor's degree in history and secondary education. I did not actually fulfill the time that Sharon did in teaching. So I learned so much from her daily, and it's truly an honor to be able to work with you all who attended this session today, and Sharon especially. So
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you have time, register for some of those workshops tomorrow, particularly Green Dot Challenge. That's going to go over more about how students can work independently within USA Test Prep and track and take ownership of their work and soar. I think it's exciting when students see those pink dots turn green. So I highly recommend that particular workshop if you can attend it. Oh, Miss Connie, thank you. I'm looking at some of the chat. Thank you, Miss Connie. That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
I think we had a question as well, and I agree, Miss Connie, as well with you. Michelle asked which tab took you to the place where students could work on their own pace.
Oh,
So I can, for example, if Michelle, so that was actually their practice menu. So
mhm.
from the students, as soon as they log in at the top, there's just a practice menu and they'll find their subject area, and that's exactly where you go. Tell them to go to the top at practice and choose their subject, and they'll be popped right in to that area that Sharon showed you.
Yes.
And we've got some great, nice things in the chat. Thank you all so much. I know this is late in the day. And like Sharon said, we have
Yeah.
some great sessions tomorrow as well that we're really excited about. And even if you cannot attend, please register anyway, and we will send you the recording. I'm going to put that link in one more time. But we're so grateful for you all to take the time out of your busy schedules to listen to us. So it's been a pleasure.